The real reason, and I told everybody, the real reason I've asked you to come on is the big mysteries behind 5G and what the heck is going on with this new 5G technology. And actually, one more final plug, and I may plug it again. Had the states not allowed the federal government to take all of these, because the federal government has no enumerated power to dictate these types of commerces, nor do they have the ability to give authorization for this type of technology to roll out. We've just been duped, and they've been selling us downriver for years and years with the auto industry, energy, with these tech companies and so forth. And so let me first get into the real question I have. And folks, what's the name of your book? I don't want to mispronounce it. I don't have it in front of me. Forgive me.
It's called Whoa Nelly. I show a picture of a man sitting on a chair holding on to his iPad or laptop, whatever it is, and it's like he's being taken away on a very fast horse into the realms of 5G. So it's called Whoa Nelly, 5G Dangers and Deception of Powerful New Wireless Technology.
And so, like I always, like I always do, folks, I will have on my podcast page and the important links, the link to Orlean's book, how you can get this, and the information on Orlean, Eagle Forum, and so forth. In reading this book goes into not only just 5G, it gets into the harms of current 4G, 3G. She actually, and I applaud you in providing the electromagnetic spectrum and showing where certain things fall into the electromagnetic spectrum regarding these types of technologies and so forth. And even you even get into smart meters, and you kind of lead off with smart meters. And so one of the things that I wanted to get into, because I didn't see it and I may have skimmed over it, but what is the range of the harmful emanations from smart meters as well as a cell phone? I mean, is there no safe distance like Ralph Nader's no safe speed with the Barracuda?
Actually, they're just about the same. In fact, when I was stopping a man from putting a smart meter on our home back in 2010, he told me, so I don't understand why you're so opposed to this smart meter. It doesn't have any more radiation in it than a cell phone does.
Right.
I said, well, thank you for telling me that. Now I'm going to go investigate cell phones. And so in the original book that I wrote called Just Say No to Big Brother's Smart Meter, I had a chapter on cell phones and cell phone towers because I found out they were very much the same realm and very dangerous. So what that is about a 2.5 to 6 gigahertz of energy, of radiation coming out. And with 5G, that is going to be put into a much higher realm.
Right.
Which will be much more dangerous.
But
in updating that book on smart meters, I ended up with so much material on the cell phones and cell phone towers and the 5G antennas that I took that chapter out and made a whole book, all of its own, which is about 350 pages.
Right.
It's very much information I discovered.
Right. So, but my question specifically is there a range? In other words, like if you're within 2 feet, you're getting cooked. If you're, 6 feet and beyond, it's a little safer, but less. I mean, is it 20 feet? What is the range to where you're okay and not getting cooked?
Well, it depends. If you're using a cell phone, you should always hold it away from your body. They recommend 2 inches. I would recommend even more, putting it on a speakerphone and holding at least a foot away.
Okay.
If you're in the range of a cell phone tower, within 1,000 feet, you're being affected.
Right.
So if you're really up close, then it's extremely harmful. The same with your smart meter.
Right.
If the smart meter is on the side of your wall where you sleep, it's very dangerous.
Yes.
So the farther away from it, the better you are, but it would be much better if you don't have it on your home at all.
Well, so in reading the book, because Orlean gets in, folks, she gets into the fact of what they're able to do with these smart meters. And so I'm actually working with somebody that is coming up with a product that will actually wrap around the smart meter and actually will allow you to put a device on the inside of the home that will completely block the emissions of a smart meter. Some people live in states that they don't live, so I'm going to say this out of one side of my mouth with my tongue in cheek, as you know. Some of us are not as fortunate to living in California because California allows people to opt out. There are states that are not allowing people to opt out and actually that the opting out, folks, has a lot to do with Orlean's efforts in your petitioning and making the attention to this. And so since we don't live there, and like I said, I'm working with a person that's working on a patent to actually create a device that completely blocks this. By law, some of these states, you're required to have that, but you're not required to actually cook yourself. They didn't pass a law that said you had to allow yourself to be cooked. So you can because it's your property, you can put anything around that. And if they have to come and read the meter to get the information, then that's what they're going to have to do because you're not required to allow yourself to be cooked. And so we're trying to push that issue that way so that all of a sudden the energy company's going, hey, what the heck's going on? Why can't we get our reading from the smart meter? And they're going to go, oh, look at this. There's people are putting these things up. And so anyway, that's really good.
Well, that will defeat one of their big agendas through this, and that's enormous data collection.
Yes, absolutely.
If the smart meter is operating the way...
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So with that, the next question I have is, based on the research and everything else, you've probably been exposed. What about the Bluetooth signals and the Bluetooth technology? Because I see people that think they're safe with Bluetooth, and it's emanating as well. And to me, it seems like the only way to go is with wired headsets and microphone. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
If we had wired everything, we would be perfectly fine.
Right.
But it's wireless, and the radiation that they have to use because of that with a little RF chip and everything.
Right.
That's what is so harmful to our bodies because our bodies are electrical beings. Our heart operates on electricity just as our brain does. So we're being totally affected by all these EMF waves and radiation that are bombarding us.
Right. So do you have a recommendation on, because I know a few people, my wife being one, that has gone through a variety of wired headsets. And so I think what we should do is identify, hey, here's probably the best wired headset out there. Do you have anything like that you could recommend?
Well, the last chapter of my book, I have all sorts of websites that people can go to and just kind of do their own research. I don't have any products that I sell or recommend myself, but I do have some good authorities that I list in my book, and I recommend people just going to their websites and investigating it. We have a man by the name of Eric Windheim who came to our home. He's a home biologist, and he has an instrument that just tests everything in your home. He's the one that told us that we needed to get rid of our light bulbs, that they were emitting EMF radiation even when they're not even turned on.
Which ones? Are these the fluorescent ones?
Those are the little spaghetti ones, the CFLs.
Yes, okay.
They also have mercury in them.
Yes.
And even the LED lights have emissions. So there are some that are better than others, but I just went back to the old incandescent that has no emissions whatsoever. And they're very, very hard to find now, but if you can still find them in a store, buy as many as you can and just keep them in reserve.
Right.
But all of those things, it's just amazing, all that we found out. Even though we didn't have a smart meter, we found so many parts of our home that had dirty electricity, that's what it's called.
Right.
It gives out all of these emissions.
Right.
And you can also buy an instrument yourself to kind of check that out. And all of my websites at the end of the book, you have all sorts of places you can go to buy those things.
Right. One of the things that I've noticed is you talk about percentages of risks of cancer and so forth. And folks, you really need to read this book because she actually identifies proximities and so forth of people in buildings that all obtain. As a matter of fact, I was absolutely amazed with the SDSU information of room 131. Everybody that got cancer on the facility was in that room almost. And so you would think that after the second or third one that the campus would have investigated and say, hey, something's going on here. But that's the problem with people, that they don't, we're always in the weeds. Nobody's ever really looking at the big picture, at the macro, going, hey, there's a real commonality here, and we've got to look at this.
The problem with San Diego State, I think they were very well aware of the dangers. They just liked the money that was coming in from this big cell phone tower that was right next to that office. And just about every university, and even some of our elementary schools, high schools, junior highs, have cell phone towers right on campus because they get like $2,000 a year, whatever the fee is that they're getting from the cell phone industry, to bring these on their campus, and they're not being told how harmful they are. I think my own husband developed leukemia from working at Sonoma State University for 35 years. And, well, it wasn't during that entire time that the cell phone tower was there, probably the last 15 years. But about 10 years ago, he came down with leukemia. And that's never been something we've ever had in our family.
Right.
But now that he has retired, he's been retired for 2 years and is away from the university, things are so much better. But he has to take the leukemia medication, and we're just hoping he's going to go on living. But it's very sad what
it is.
Just about every one of these places have what is known as cancer clusters, where either students or faculty start coming down with cancer from being in these offices right next to a cell phone tower.
So what I think needs to happen is I think that there needs to be a push by everybody that's listening and getting the word out that there needs to be legislation in every state that starts identifying who will be liable if anybody gets cancer from the placements of these things. So in other words, anybody that gets approached by these big tech companies to put these towers in your residential area or what have you, that they take full liability. And as a matter of fact, you need to step up and say, we have to be able to sign off on being exposed. We have to be the sovereigns in saying, we're okay with being cooked and being killed. And I don't think anybody listening thinks that that's okay. But we have to start creating legislation, one, to start holding people liable, especially those who, you can't unring a bell. And so when the people have installed these towers and installed these systems so that they can get money, if they were not aware, okay, or if there was any dubiousness, then you got to be able to hold the company liable. But if they were aware and they still allowed it, they have shared liability. Employers giving employees cell phones that are cooking their employees and then having them call into work and using that cell phone for work purposes, they have to share liability as well, especially if everybody is being made aware. And so that's one of the things that I think the legislation, and would you not agree that legislation needs to identify the harms in the selling of the cell phones as well as companies that are buying it and so forth, so that they understand their liability with these things? Is that not correct?
I think that would be a really good thing to try. The problem is the FCC, Federal Communication Commission, has passed rulings that say you're not allowed to mention the word health if you're opposing a smart meter or a cell phone tower or any of these cell phones themselves. And it's just absolutely ludicrous. So you can say, well, we're opposed to the cell phone tower because it doesn't look very good on our campus. that is overbearing or is out of date, but if you mention health, you're not allowed to do that. Isn't that ridiculous?
Well, so what that is that's a violation of the Constitution, because when they're telling you can't use a word, that means they're restricting speech. And Congress and the federal government has no authority to take away our ability to speak. We're about 1 minute out from the next break, and I've still got more questions. But I honestly would like to see, and this can be an ancillary conversation maybe down the road, but I'd like to actually see some really well articulated and getting states to start cook these things up and moving forward in legislating liability so that people are fully aware, because you're going to actually see the recoiling of these types of things, because I think schools will actually say, you know what, if we're going to be liable, you're going to have to take that down and put it somewhere else. And if neighborhoods, communities, cities, and so forth start standing up and saying, hey, we have to have we got to put this in a safe spot, because we're going to be liable. Because if you can start holding people liable, then they're going to think twice. Another question I have is, you talk about the 100%, and some you need to call 215-TOP-TALK. That's 215-867-8255. And so that, I got to tell you, that was one of the most enjoyable interviews I have done, because I really learned a lot. I learned a lot from the book, and I learned a lot from our conversation. You can tell that you're not being told the whole story. Surprise! I mean, this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. But there is, I believe, a sentiment amongst